Okay, good morning. My name is Raul Martinez. Welcome to Copperplate for the Harrison. I'm here at the Harrison Collection in the reading room of the Special Collections and Book Arts and Special Collections Department of the San Francisco Public Library. We're going to be seeing some outstanding pieces of copperplate calligraphy here, which are part of the Harrison Collection. I'm here with Andrea Grimes, who is the program manager of the Book Arts and Special Collections Department. And I'm going to let her tell us a little bit about the Harrison Collection.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's a big thrill to do this show and tell on Zoom with all of you. I'm Andrea, and I work in Book Arts and Special Collections, just as Raul said. This is the home of many wonderful collections. One of the most unique being the Richard Harrison Collection of Calligraphy and Lettering. It was founded in 1963 through the generosity of Richard Harrison, along with then city librarian William Holman and our graphic designer and calligrapher Theo Young. For many years, the great Susie Taylor, who was one of the most beautiful practitioners of italic, was the curator here at the Harrison Collection and collected and knew many, many calligraphers. So it's really on her that we can base a lot of our wonderfulness, and everyone is welcome to use the collection. There's no appointment necessary. You just come in. You can always email me that you're coming at andrea.grimes@sfpl.org. We are always happy to help you find the calligraphy or the calligrapher of your dreams. Back to Raul.
Yeah, throughout the library, you'll see those little labels and notices telling you to use pencils only. Almost all of those, I believe, were done by Susie Taylor many years ago. So I guess we'll start with the Universal Penman by George Bickham. George Bickham was an 18th century calligrapher. During the 18th century, we had it was the period of the development of copperplate calligraphy in England. And George Bickham, who was not only an excellent calligrapher, but a skilled engraver, decided that he was going to put together a collection of penmanship by the major master penman of his day. And he engraved all of those, he copied them all onto engraved copper plates using the copperplate engraving technique, and then printed out the Universal Penman. He sold this in installments. I believe there were 58 or 52 installments over a period of 8 years. And starting in 1733, and I guess ending in 1741. I think the 25 different scribes are represented in the Universal Penman. Among them, there's Joseph Champion, W. Kippax, Willington Clark, Richard Morris, L. Austin, Nathaniel Dubb, and Samuel Vaux. This was kind of a first for the 18th century, because up till that time, getting a good representative collection of all these different styles of penmanship in one collection was difficult. It required a lot of research and required a lot of money to do. So this was something that was very sought after by the perhaps poorer calligraphy collectors of the 18th century. It is rare to find a complete edition of the Universal Penman. There were 212 plates total in it. I don't know if this is a complete, I think it may be a complete collection of all the plates, because many of the collectors or subscribers did save all of the issues and had them bound together after they were all together. This copy, I believe, belongs to the to Brooks Brothers. If you can, they have a little ex libris book label here.
And then later purchased by Edward Doggett, who was a collector.
Edward, you can see Edward Doggett's name there. Oh, actually, two people, Hugh Greenfield Doggett and Edward Greenfield Doggett.
I love the fact that that Brooks Brothers is on there because they used it. Their clerks would have used it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they may have used some of the examples of invoices and letters.
And yeah.
It was almost like they took the form letters out of this.
Yes, and in fact, I think aren't they in the back?
I believe there are also form letters, correct?
Sure.
This was one of the originals that was published in between 1733 and 1740. This is a young gentleman's letter to his father, done by Edward Dawson. Well, it's a copy of penmanship by Edward Dawson. Let me see if I can find an example of their invoices in clerical forms in here too. I don't know where they are. This is a selection of. Did you see
Look
something?
in the very back.
Yeah.
You're going to see something.
Oh, I see.
Isn't that great?
See, here is an index for the universal penman. Let's see. Letters, copies, writing.
I think there's another one on the other side. Raoul. Yeah, I think so.
Bills of exchange, 116. 116, business 146, volume 149, 116, 149.
Oh,
let's see. So with it,
looks like a
I'm
little
not sure which numbers.
receipt.
There's a receipt with a beautiful margin containing gorgeous majuscules. And 149, I believe, is a bill of lading. This is a bills of exchange. Here's an acquittance, which is it's just gorgeous. It's a piece of artwork. I assume that we can tell when this particular issue is printed from the date that's on the acquittance. It's in 1739, June 3rd, 1739. Here's a receipt, November 15th, 1739, received by the hands of Mr. Silas Thorne on the order of S. Gore, Esquire. It's fun to see all these things, and I guess they use them as examples of receipts that they would write up, although I assume that they would be a little bit simpler when they scribbled them out. Can I turn this on? This
Sure.
light? And then there are many just citations about different virtues or different principles. Poetry.
In all caps, unusual.
Yeah, the all caps flourishing at the top is over the top. Now the originals, the examples of penmanship that were submitted by the writing masters were done with a quill, because we're talking about the early 18th century. Metal nibs weren't invented until the early 19th century, around 1830 or so. Yeah, it's amazing. And this is a hairline strip too, which is difficult to do.
Exactly. It's like you must have done the quinoa first and build it, then you must have practiced that a lot.
But then again, remember, this was engraved afterwards, so the engraving is more perfect than the original calligraphy. It's done with a burin, and this, which is on a rotating turntable. Gorham painting. Now, this book was reprinted in a smaller format by Dover, and you can buy a paperback edition of it. Of course, it's about 2/3 of the size of this one, but it's interesting to see that. This is by E. Austin on humility. Here you can see an example of unlooped ascenders. Notice that the L, the H, most of the letters with ascenders do not have loops on them, except for the B there, bear.
Two different E's.
Yeah. Right, they're using two different types of E's there. Unusual. E. Austin. Honor, and the flourishing is just amazing.
Wow, you could teach a whole class just about this book.
Yeah.
It's more than just a calligraphy too. It's like they're providing examples of letters of how to address different people.
Yes, yeah, there are many form letters, kind of, and then a lot of moral pieces about, virtues and things. There's calligraphy by Joseph Champion here. This is Wellington Clark. Just a similar comparison. Some examples of black letter, or fraktur rather, and copperplate. Let's see if I can find an example of Italian hand. I'm not sure if they have any of that here. But, Italian hand was the precursor of, well, this looks a little bit like Italian hand. Italian hand had like these kind of blobby, club-like ascenders and descenders, but there are better examples. And Italian hand was the precursor of copperplate, as the name implies. It developed in Italy and gradually found its way into France. Here we have another example of something that was inspired by Italian hand.
Interesting, they have all these ways of filling out the edge of the the line if it's not.
Yeah, they extend
Even it
the
out.
lines sometimes here to make it right, justified.
Wow, that would be a neat present for any calligrapher.
Yeah, it would be a very good present. It's very hard to find complete copies of the universal penman, since many of the editions or issues were written upon and they were reused a lot. There was a lot of page turning, and then they were just lost as a result, or they were used as guide sheets or something to learn how to write certain letters. In the beginning of the 20th century, there was kind of a calligraphy revival, and during that time, there was much more interest developed in things like this and in the universal penman. The calligraphy revival was led by William Morris, as well as Edward Johnston, Grayley Hewitt, and A. Dwiggins. And this is really only considered one of the few examples, fairly complete, of writing styles from the 18th century England. The next piece is by Judy Dieterich. Judy Dieterich is, she leads an ongoing weekly study group, the calligraphy study group, on Thursdays, I believe, in Mendocino or Fort Bragg. She taught calligraphy and graphic design at the College of the Redwoods on the Mendocino coast, and she helped to develop their graphic arts certificate program there. She still teaches for Friends of Calligraphy and on her own. Next year, she will be teaching humanist bookhand later on in the year. Registration for that will be opening on Saturday, tomorrow. This is a citation from something by Stephen King. It's done in black watercolor on a cream laid or woe, perhaps Arches text woe, perhaps, or Hahnemuhle Angora paper, which are both of which are very fine mold-made papers, probably industrially mold-made. And I believe this is, I believe everything is watercolor, even the purple initial W. I believe she may have done this with a very fine broad edged nib. It looks like some of the, I'm not sure, but it looks like some of the smaller letters were done with a slightly square cut pen, but it's hard to tell. It might have been a pointed nib, I'm not sure. This next piece is by Claude Dieterich. Claude Dieterich is from Avignon. He was the director of the graphic design school at the Facultad de Artes Plásticas of the Universidad Católica in Lima, Peru. He has worked in New York, Miami, and most recently in San Francisco, where he has taught for the Academy of Art College and Friends of Calligraphy. He now lives in Lima, Peru. This is a print on some type of beautiful laid paper. Laid means that it has lines running through it that were left by the mold in which the paper was made. It's a straight line mold. And La Belle Écriture, it's about the beautiful handwriting or the beautiful writing. Claude has taught he did teach at least one copperplate class for Friends of Calligraphy way back about 10, 12 years ago. Jean Larcher was a French calligrapher originally. Well, he lived in Cergy-Pontoise in France. He published a book in 2014 called Traits de caractère, which you have here at the Book Arts and Special Collections Department. And you can take a look at that too if you're interested. It's a Traits de caractère is just a collection, well, a compilation of his work. It's a real collection of showpieces by Jean Larcher. He died in 2015. He was famous for using a straight holder when he did pointed pen calligraphy. He did not use an oblique holder as you did when learning copperplate. He taught Rachel Yallop and other calligraphers, and Rachel Yallop still does do pointed pen calligraphy with a straight nib, not with an oblique holder. The piece that we're looking at now is an alphabet in white and red gouache on canson mi-teinte paper, which is a kind of a stiff, very nice stiff calligraphy paper, which has a fine texture on one side, and then I see this is the textured side. He did the calligraphy on the smoother side, which is perhaps he chose the smoother side to do it on because he wanted to get really fine, even hairlines. Right, so I suppose. And I believe that all of these, the red is names of calligraphers. There's Lagunitas, there's States, there's Pete, there's Grote. Now I assume that it refers to Jenny Grote, the calligrapher Jenny Grote. This was done in 1993. And then the next piece by Jean Larcher is a citation by Patricia Buddes, the late Patricia Buddes, a calligraphy teacher and calligrapher who taught a lot of calligraphers in the Bay Area and in California. And the quotation starts, "I believe that teaching is enlightened sharing." And this too is done with white and red gouache on canson mi-teinte paper. And it looks like this too was done on the smooth side of the paper. Notice that the tops of the letters, the full strokes are not squared off. They're pointed. And this was one of the characteristics of his calligraphy, which he passed on to other people such as Rachel Yallop. None of the full strokes are squared off on top, which gives the calligraphy kind of it gives it a lighter, more delicate look. Notice also the unusual T here. The S's, as Sarah was pointing out, there's a very fine hairline between the dot and the bowl of the S. There's also the little X with a crossbar in it. Also the unusual lead-in strokes to the W's, not the usual lead-in strokes. Usually it has a squared off top on it. Another unusual W, a variation of the W here. And the F, that is a variation. And this looks like it was done in 3:3 proportions. That is 3 units. The ascender space is 3 units. The X space is 3 units. And the descender space is 3 units. So these letters have shorter ascenders and descenders than you learned in the class. And the interlinear spacing is kind of compressed. A beautiful example of pointed pen calligraphy. So let's move on to Georgiana Artigas. So Georgiana Artigas came from Cuba. I believe she was born she was born before 1926, because in 1926, she met a boy who inspired her very much. His name was Gregorio Plumas, and he had beautiful handwriting. And apparently at that time, she made the decision to start learning beautiful handwriting. Since her family didn't have the means to send her to an art academy, she attended Havana's Professional School of Commerce. This was in the 1930s. She studied calligraphy and American cursive handwriting with Manuel Lorenzo. She was encouraged to take a correspondence course from the Zenurian College of Penmanship in Columbus, Ohio, which she did, and she got an advanced certificate in handwriting. She also took private lessons in calligraphy and fine arts. Thereafter, she taught American cursive handwriting in private schools and business colleges, mainly in Cuba, I believe, and in Havana. In 1963, she moved to the United States and settled in New York, where she worked for Ames and Rawlinson, which is an engrossing firm, where she made honorary certificates, plaques, and she also did freelance work and continued her research in calligraphy. In 1973, she established a studio in Miami and continued to do work independently, doing awards, citations, logo type design, and greeting cards. She was a charter member of New York's Society of Scribes, and I believe she was a founding member of the South Florida Calligraphy Guild. She is very well known in Florida. She passed away, I believe, about 10 years ago. She unfortunately. On a side note, I believe that Claude Dieterich was instrumental in compiling a lot of her pieces and getting her book, Passion for the Pen, published. I believe that you have that here, Passion for the Pen, which is a kind of a compendium of Georgiana Artigas's work. It's a beautiful book to look at. This first piece is the Viscayan Certificate of Recognition. These are all hand-done pieces with hand-done artwork on them. It's beautiful. This is on a type of cream paper. It's probably, the ink is probably Chinese ink stick. And the paper is some type of cream paper. It looks like a little bit like, I don't know, kind of like Arches text wove, but a smoother finish. And probably the illustration was probably done with watercolor, I would assume, possibly gouache. You can see her signature style, in which there was actually a break at the bottoms and the tops of letters where pressure strokes turned into hairlines. But you can see this better in larger examples of her work. It's very precise, very beautiful work. It's almost almost a type of engrosser script, because it's so precise without being heavy. On her S's, she actually puts the dots in on the right-hand side of the upstroke. I prefer to put them on the left-hand side. She uses the variation of the R. And the F's, as you notice, have a little dot on the left-hand side. I love that L with the leg going underneath the line. The next piece is, I'm not sure if this is an original or if it's a print. It's a beautiful piece. I can see, I believe it is an original because I can see some, oh, I see guidelines for a name which would be written inside here. I'm not sure if this is an original or not.
And who's it done by?
This is all Georgiana Artigas.
Got it.
And it's in Latin. A diploma in Latin. It's done in brown ink on cream paper. And it's 14 inches by 11 inches. The next one is a certificate of recognition for James Missioner, a novelist who was presented the gold medal award presented to James Missioner by the American Institute of Polish Culture in recognition of his outstanding achievements in the field of literature. Now in this piece, you can see a little more clearly the little tiny gaps that she leaves at the bottoms of her strokes at the baseline. I don't know what the brown and the gold are. They may be watercolor. I see a little bit of transparency in the name, and James Missioner's name. So this was done in 1987. The next piece is the Governor's Award of Achievement, awarded to Ernest George Sewell. Now this was the original. It says for reproduction. It's done in black Chinese ink stick, probably on cream paper in 1985. And it bears the Great Seal of the state of Florida. And I don't think that she actually did these, which makes me wonder if this is an original or a print, or maybe the insignias were printed on the bottom, and then the rest of the calligraphy was done in hand. I'm not sure. Notice how narrow her letters are. the bowls of her letters are kind of more almost pointed at the bottom, but she does that very, very consistently. The next one is an original for reproduction, a certificate awarded by the Mount Sinai Medical Center of Greater Miami. You can see that whiteout was added in certain places to cover up corrections. The Mount Sinai Medical Center of Greater Miami offers this certificate to so-and-so for his outstanding participation in the Second South American Symposium of Mount Sinai Medical Center, and for his contribution to medical education and the development of international relations in the field of health. Bogota, Colombia, April 11th, 1984.
So Raul, I had to leave for a few minutes, so I don't know whether you discussed works in progress by calligraphers, so that you can see their approaches and their work until the penultimate, final piece, which is something we love to have here in the collection, to show students and calligraphers the process that the calligrapher went through. So these are good examples.
Right, yeah, this shows the piece that would be submitted to the photographer, and then it would be photographed and under a strong light, and then that would be reproduced and printed.
So all the errors in the
So yeah, so you can see that there have been a lot of corrections on this, and they pasted in other pieces of artwork. So this is, I guess what you'd call a paste up.
Paste up, yeah, paste up, and then I guess photo ready.
Photo ready,
Camera ready.
Camera ready,
a
sorry.
camera ready original piece.
But how could it be with all the little lines still on it? Like,
Well, I think you can remove those in a photograph.
I guess right, so
What's
it's
the
digitally
lines?
The
retouched.
lines, perhaps. I don't think you would erase them, but I think there's a way of removing them.
They don't show.
Yeah.
Although if you use a very strong light on it with a camera, maybe you wouldn't see it.
And she's one of the calligraphers that I was happy to see. We do have some of the camera ready artwork and paste ups, mock-ups, that sort of thing within her collection. There's other calligraphers like Thomas Ingmeyer, for instance. We have lots of his, the work in progress, and then the final piece. So it's really kind of wonderful.
Yeah, we have a lot of works in progress by other calligraphers. Yeah, Georgia Dever.
Right. Oh my God, yes.
There's a lot of workups in hers. A lot of that. Here's another workup by Georgiana Artigas. She gives instructions to reduce to 8 1/4 inches. Yeah. Here she wants this reduced to 3 1/2 by 6. 6 being the height, 3 1/2 being the width. Appetite comes with eating, but the thirst goes away with drinking. This is may I fold that back like this?
Yeah.
This is a quote by Rabelais, the French philosopher. Again, you can see this. This was probably done in black Chinese stick ink. And you can see a lot of corrections using whiteout. And this can be photographed, and the corrections won't show. It's a really beautiful piece. You can see the characteristic gaps at the bottom, at the baseline. Notice the way she joins the E and the S. They're very, very close together. This interesting way of ending of the exit stroke of the S. The P's, notice how she tapers off on the descenders of the P's so as not to interfere with the writing that comes below. She did not square off the P's, she tapered them off. And notice that the wavy crossbar on the T's, which do not even cross the crossbars, which is an interesting way of doing the T's. Same thing with in the word with, the ascender of the H turns into the crossbar of the T. So this is how you would deal with a piece that has a copperplate piece that has a very tight interlinear space. Notice that she's really kind of taking a lot of extraordinary measures to keep anything from colliding with anything else. So that's one way of dealing with tight interlinear space in copperplate, but it's difficult to do. Though notice that she had, with the G, she had to kind of run the descender of the G, and taper it off and run it over to the left. There's probably a lot of trials on this piece, composing this piece, because you would have to really think about what you did with the ascenders and descenders because of that narrow interlinear space. The last piece by Georgiana Artigas is this camera-ready artwork for a wedding invitation. Wedding invitation of Jose Rosique and Ola Lamas de Rosique. I'm sorry, Ileana and Antonio are the bride and groom. These are the parents of the bride and groom at the top. They, Filiberto Garrudo, Milagros Carrandi de Garrudo, have the honor of inviting you to the marriage of their children, Ileana and Antonio, Saturday, 28th of August in 1982 at 6:30 in the afternoon at the Plymouth Congregational Church on Devon Road in Coconut Grove, Florida, close to where she lived in Miami. Again, you can see a lot of whiteout, a lot of corrections done here. She placed the name of the bride and groom on a separate piece of paper and pasted it in. Yeah, a lot of pasting in here. Yeah, this is probably black Chinese ink stick again, on white paper mounted on cardboard with corrections, and it was done in 1984. I believe that Georgiana Artigas continued working into the 90s. I think I've seen work by her dated in the 90s. Okay, so, and then these last two pieces are by John Stevens. John Stevens, excuse me, is an American calligrapher living in South Carolina. He often teaches North Carolina, I'm sorry. And he often teaches at the Cheerio Calligraphy Camp in North Carolina. He has taught several times in San Francisco. Once for Letterform Archive, where I took a fracture class from him. He's very well known for his brush Roman capitals, but he also does pointed pen calligraphy, as you can see here. I don't know whether he did this with an oblique pen or a straight holder. The first piece is sitting in an English garden. Oh no, this is not that piece. This is Fancy Pants. This is well, this is a workup or a sketch for a wine label, I believe,
Fancy pants.
which was not used. Sorry, I forgot to check, but this is a very interesting piece, very, very playful. And oh, thank you. The second piece is another sketch for a wine label, which was not used. I assume that the wine would have been called Flaunt, but I love that F, and the F was done in several different strokes. Notice the curve of on the left-hand side of the F. He must have first done the S, the compound curve, and then he must have started the second curve by lifting the nib and then joining this in a very treacherous join, which was beautifully done. And his A's are kind of different. They're not the usual A's that you see in standard copperplate. They're more pointed at the top, and the bowl starts almost at the 12 o'clock position. But this shows some very well done offhand flourishing. It shows you what a steady hand he has to be able to join those strokes. Although perhaps that was done in a single stroke. It's possible that he did that with a quill, in which case he would have been able to do something like that and actually work with the back of the nib, but I'm not sure. I believe this was done with walnut. This was a mixture of walnut ink and sumi ink. And finally, this is sitting in an English garden, a pointed pen piece. It's not copperplate, but except for the attribution, John Lennon, but it's a really fun piece. Notice all of the hairlines and the building up of the letters. Notice how he fills in the space very well with all the flourishes. That's all that we have today to show you there, but feel free to come to the Harrison collection at the 6th floor of the San Francisco Public Library in the Book Arts and Special
Thanks,
Collections
everyone.
Department.
Thank you, Raoul. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This was
Thank you
wonderful.
so much for
Always
putting this together.
educational. Love it.
Yeah. There are a lot of other copperplate pieces that you can come to see. There are also the books that we did not see today. Including John Stevens, a scribe of the written word, the paperback edition of the Universal Penman, Trait de Caractère by Jean Larcher, A Passion for the Pen about Georgiana Artigas,
Judy
And-
Dietrich's book.
And Judy
A new
Dietrich's
book.
calligraphy book. She has put one out, and I don't think I've forgotten anyone. But this recording will be available online and will be left up for 1 month approximately. I will send out the link to the recording later on today. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That was delightful. That was delightful.
I learned a lot.